we're making history again.
Let's go!
We are one step by one step accomplishing what we need to do as a nation to lead again in space, and it's not just rhetoric.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Spot and Dog.
Today we once again proudly launch American astronauts on American rockets, the best in the world, from right here on American soil.
At this point, the convoy is approaching pad 39A, and they're entering what is known as the BDA, or blast danger area. Now, before any pad technicians, engineers, or astronauts enter that area around the launch pad, the SpaceX and NASA teams do an internal go-no-go poll to make sure everything is clear.
This storied launch pad, which has been the beginning point for so many firsts, is the perfect backdrop for today's historic launch that marks a new first and a new era in human spaceflight.
And here's a view from our gantry near the Launch Complex 39A. So we've got another view of the convoy going by here. If I had to count up all the cameras we have all over the place for this, I'd be here all day.
That's a beautiful shot right there, looking at the Kennedy Space Center and Merritt Island and all of the nature around us. It's a big buffer from 39A so that we can be safe and launch our rockets off to space safely.
Absolutely, and a lot of people don't realize this is a national wildlife refuge. I mean, I pass turtles on the way to my car every day.
Yeah.
I mean, my building's mixed up, so it's on the right now.
Yeah,
Bigger building.
The other is the Falcon Support Building. It's where all of our offices are, and yes, you're correct.
Thank you for the correction, Laura.
There's our hangar. We process Falcon Heavy in there. There are other boosters in that hangar as well, and the rocket and Dragon that is on the pad right now was put together, or rather finally integrated inside of that hangar and then rolled out to that pad to go up vertical.
And there it is. That shot really gives you a sense of the scale of the Falcon 9 rocket. Those Teslas look teeny tiny making their way up there. And so as they make their way up to the pad, we're going to throw it over now to Hawthorne, where Jesse and Dan are watching the action. Hi, guys.
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, really cool watching the Teslas pull up, driving on the launch pad just a few feet away from the vehicle. This is awesome and getting really excited over here. Us looking at the launch pad right now, we've had to do a number of upgrades, but not only to the launch pad, but SpaceX has also made changes to both Falcon 9 and Dragon to enable flying crew. And a key update to this latest version of Dragon is its highly reliable launch escape system that is capable of carrying crew to safety at any point during the ascent of the rocket.
Another pretty key upgrade is the Dragon's new life support system. As you can imagine, flying humans requires keeping a habitable environment throughout the entire flight, and that means covering everything like providing breathing air, keeping the capsule at a safe pressure, keeping it free of contaminants, removing any carbon dioxide in the air, regulating the temperature, the humidity, all of these things, and also implementing that waste collection system, aka the toilet.
That sounds pretty important. The changes to Falcon 9 were small but extremely meaningful to meet NASA's requirements for safety for human spaceflight. And specifically, SpaceX had to prove a high degree of fault tolerance, meaning that small failures in the system would not lead to mission failure. Falcon 9 was already able to handle engine failure, but new emphasis was put on making sure that a failure throughout any phase of launch would not mean mission failure. And this goes all the way down to latches, control valves, electronics, wiring, and so much more.
All right, well, with the astronauts now on location at pad 39A, we're going to swing it right back. Marie, Lauren, Leland, take us through the crew making their final steps towards the Dragon spacecraft.
Sure thing. So we are looking again at Launch Complex 39A. Just a few seconds ago, we saw the Tesla carrying Bob and Doug pull up to the launch pad. This is the site of so much history, you guys. This is where Apollo and Saturn V rockets that launched to the moon took astronauts from. I mean, this pad has so much history. Leland, you launched from there. What's it like seeing Crew Dragon and Falcon 9 there with the pad, with all of the visual changes that have been made? I mean, what kind of emotions does this stir up in you?
You know, when we got out of our Astro van, we stepped out and we just looked up to see this vehicle, and it was creaking, it was groaning, it was
Processed a few miles down the road at Area 59, or Dragonland as we like to call it. We then put it
34 seconds and counting. In just a couple of minutes, we are expecting to hear a formal announcement that the crew is at the pad. Of course, we saw them pull up in the Teslas, and there they are. Looks like they've already gotten out of the car, and they are walking up to the elevator that will carry them all the way up to the 255-foot level, and then they'll have a couple of steps to get up to the level where the crew access arm is.
I have the AC/DC song in my head as I see them walking up.
You know what I was kind of jamming out to on my way in was ZZ Top, Sharp Dressed Man.
Oh, nice.
I was like, I don't know, that might be on my playlist if I were in there. But there they are, taken in the sight, craning to see the top of the Falcon 9 rocket. It's 230 feet tall if you round up, and then Crew Dragon is another 27 feet from the bottom of the trunk to the top of the nose cone. So when you're out there in person, it's really hard to describe just how large it is.
Look at them getting excited. They're ready to get in the vehicle, get in the elevator, and make it to the top. There's some FOD. He's picking up foreign object debris.
Appreciate that. They're also wearing FOD covers on their shoes, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We want to make sure that they don't, track the inside of Dragon when they go in, and so right before they enter the vehicle, they'll remove the FOD covers off of their boots.
You take for granted, all just the little details like that, all of the thought and preparation that has to go into literally every single piece of this operation.
I love the makeover of Pad 39A with the sleek black with the white ticking and the lines, and it's a very futuristic look for this iconic launch pad. And to think what's been there before with Mercury, Gemini, Apollo shuttle, and now the SpaceX Crew Dragon getting ready for a launch to the International Space Station. Rocket fuel still going through my veins.
And we feel so honored to be able to launch from here. Oh, here they are. That's a really fast elevator.
Yeah.
I know, it really zips. That took them up to 255 feet in just a matter of seconds.
They were moving their FOD covers.
Looks like they were just maybe checking something on his boot or leg.
And we should hear a call any moment that the crew has arrived at the pad as they make their way up the stairs, and they're headed to the crew access arm now. There's the worm again. Poppin'.
You know it.
Meatball.
Don't worry, there's a meatball on Crew Dragon.
Those white arrows you see there are essentially illuminating the way for anyone who's up there to find their way to the escape baskets in the event of an emergency that would require them to get far away from the rocket and the pad.
And it's hard to tell from this angle, but there's actually a phone right here, and I can't tell if it's Bob or Doug that's using the phone right now, but Leland, can you explain the significance of that? It's the same phone that was there during the shuttle days.
Yeah, you get a chance to talk to maybe friends or family that you haven't had maybe couldn't come to the launch. In this case, it's quite a few people, but just to have that last moment to talk to someone before you get in the vehicle. It's a beautiful view.
And we're watching the crew when they're done using the phone there. We expect up at about T-minus 2 hours and 35 minutes. The astronauts will ingress, or that's a word we use to describe climbing into Crew Dragon. And we saw Doug do it a couple minutes early on Wednesday. They were a little bit ahead of schedule, so that time could be a little bit flexible. But that's going to happen with the assistance of the suit techs, and they will get strapped into their seats. And so with that coming up, we're going to head over to Hawthorne for a preview of what's in store for the future in space travel. Jesse?
Thanks, Marie. Yeah, shortly after we begin to regularly fly NASA astronauts to and from the space station, SpaceX will also begin flying private passengers to station and beyond using Dragon.
That's right. NASA is enabling up to 2 private astronaut missions to visit the station each year, just as part of our support of the economy in low Earth orbit. It's one of the many ways NASA's working to just open up access to outer space for companies to manufacture products in microgravity, for any new commercial modules in space, and really just to enable more people to be able to explore the stars firsthand.
And the more people out there exploring the stars, the closer we become to becoming a multiplanetary species. Earlier, we showed you a first-hand look at where you would train if you were to fly with us on board Dragon, but now let's take a peek inside of the spacecraft itself.
Intuitive to know what we need to do at any given moment in time. When I think about comfort for the astronauts, it's really every aspect of how you could interact with the spaceship that comes to mind. We have 3 different seat sizes. We even go so far as molding the foam around the astronaut's body so that there's not any pressure points, and it's just generally a pleasurable journey to space. Dragon is a spaceship that's all about safety and reliability. We designed it to be 2-fault tolerant, which means that any 2 things could fail. So I could lose a flight computer and a thruster, and I could still bring the crew back home safely. We also added a launch escape system. If anything goes wrong on ascent, the crew can get away from Falcon and get picked up safely. I've worked on Dragon since 2012. When I see Dragon lift off, I think I'm going to feel a buildup of emotion of 8 years of working with some of the best engineers and technicians across the country that put their heart and mind into making this incredible moment happen for everybody.
All right, so that was a detailed look inside Dragon. Here's a live look at 2 astronauts about to climb right in. If you're just now tuning in, you're watching our coverage of the mission known as Demonstration Mission 2 or Demo-2. 2 days, SpaceX and NASA are going to be sending people into orbit on a mission to the International Space Station from U.S. soil for the first time since 2011. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley are the NASA astronauts flying today, and you can see them right there on screen. They are just right next to their ride up to space.
Yeah, very exciting. So as you can see, they have already arrived at pad 39A, where Falcon 9 will lift off from at 3:22 p.m. Eastern Time today. They have ascended the tall structure already, which is next to the rocket, and it's called the fixed service structure, and also have already walked down the corridor, which is known as the crew arm, which is what they're standing in right now.
That's right, and as they prepare to board Dragon, they have this one final stop they're standing in right now, and that's the White Room. The White Room is literally just the room at the end of the crew arm that has an opening into Dragon. It is the last place on planet Earth Bob and Doug are going to be standing before they step into Dragon for their ride to the International Space Station.
And the term the White Room was first used during NASA Gemini missions, where the room right before entering the spaceship was painted white. And as you can see, we've continued this tradition with painting ours white as well. And on Wednesday, they actually started a new tradition by signing the wall in the White Room on their boots, as they mentioned, as well as on their umbilical port on their suits. And that needs to be removed before they can ingress.
The crew has arrived at the White Room and its ingress is in progress on schedule.
Just listening into the nets and hearing those updates live. Yes, once the FOD check is complete, they can enter, which is happening live on your screen right now. And as they climb into Dragon, they will buckle themselves in and attach their umbilicals to their suits. And as you can see, the suit techs are there to help them get buckled and settled into those seats. And as we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization. So the suits help keep them cool, as well as delivers nitrox in case there is a suit depressurization.
As we go through this, we saw Doug Hurley go in first. He's the commander for this mission. He's closest to your screen. And then Bob Behnken's just next to him, and they're going to get some assistance from these suit techs as they get in. There are 4 seats inside of Dragon for these missions, and they are numbered 1 through 4 if you're looking from the perspective of the suit techs inside the hatch, going from right to left. So Doug Hurley is in seat 2, that's the commander seat, and Bob Behnken is in seat 3, which for Crew Dragon's the pilot seat. And obviously we don't have anybody in seats 1 or 4 today. Crew Dragon is designed to carry 4 astronauts, though, on future NASA missions, and we'll see that on Crew 1, which will have 3 NASA astronauts and 1 from our partner agency, JAXA. And then directly above the crew right now, but right in front of them once their seats get rotated, are the 3 displays that they'll use throughout the flight. And that just gives them insight into all of Dragon's systems. It allows them to take control of the vehicle and manually fly it, which we'll see them do hopefully only twice during 2 manual flight tests. As again, Dragon's autonomous, but they can jump in and take over if they need to.
And as Dan mentioned, the displays are above them right now, but those seats will rotate back for launch position so that they can easily access those displays. So coming up next, the crew will do a comm check once they're all settled in. And that's so that they can check to make sure that they can hear mission control, and then after that, their seats will be rotated into position. So let's check in with John Innsbrucker for the latest on the health of both of those vehicles. John, what's the status update today?
We're at T-minus 2 hours, 43 minutes, and counting down for the launch of Falcon 9 with Dragon to the space station. As you see, the Dragon launch pad team has obviously arrived at the pad. They got there shortly after T-minus 4 hours, opened up the side hatch on Dragon, got ready for the arrival of the astronauts. We saw the crew come up the elevators, walk over and enter Dragon, and they're now getting situated inside the capsule. Now the flight team is monitoring data from Dragon. They most recently have completed a command and telemetry check of the radio frequency system on Dragon through the tracking and data relay satellite network. That looked to go well. There are no issues in work as we watch the astronauts getting situated in their seats inside the Dragon spacecraft. The Falcon 9 team is preparing for final checkouts and propellant load. Those checkouts are due to begin at T-minus 2 hours, some 42 minutes from now, when the launch crew officially gets on console in the firing room. All systems on Falcon 9 are currently go. The range continues to be green on the support side. The areas around the pad obviously clear except for the folks doing the entry into the capsule. Air and sea space are clear. We hear helicopter go by from time to time. The big concern is the weather forecast. We are continuing right now at a 50% probability of violation of the weather constraints. The big concerns are going to be the thick clouds, precipitation, possibility of lightning. I mentioned earlier, normally you get a strong sea breeze from the ocean that pushes inland and keeps the clouds from Central Florida from building up. But today the sea breeze is fairly weak, so we expect the thunderstorms will get closer to the launch pad. We're also checking downrange conditions. If there's a contingency splashdown of Dragon, we're looking at essentially the wave heights, lightning, rain along the trajectory. Right now it's marginal, but it is still go. We do expect that to improve slightly during the day, so fingers crossed there that the downrange weather looks good. But right now at T-minus 2 hours, 41 minutes as the clock continues to count down, all systems are go for launch.
Check complete. Stand by for ground station comm check.
And again, we're just listening in. They're doing these comm checks, these communication checks. So Bob and Doug are going to do a series of these checkouts with the teams on the ground, both the Corps here in Hawthorne and the launch director out in Florida. And they're going to be doing this over Dragon to ground. And they're also going to be doing it over the countdown net. Those are the two main loops or nets that you're going to hear going out. And they're going to be doing it through their different communications paths. We heard them do through the TDRS, or the tracking data and relay satellites. Those are those primary satellites that were going to be used to talk to Bob and Doug throughout their flight and to send commands to Dragon. They'll also do it through ground stations. SpaceX has a worldwide network of ground stations that they're able to communicate with the vehicle. And that's what we'll be using to get video inside the cabin of Bob and Doug on their flight up. So if you tuned in the other day, this is one of the first things that they do once they get inside the vehicle, and this is just to make sure all the communication systems with the Dragon spacecraft, with the suits, everything are working. They're able to talk to and hear everybody on the ground.
Dragon and SpaceX, comm check, ground stations.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear, ground station comm check complete, stand by for TGIS comm check.
And just a reminder, you're hearing the core. That's the crew operations responsible engineer. That's, if you've followed NASA missions in the past, that's the Capcom position. That is pretty much the singular voice that's talking to the astronauts throughout their flight. And that's a position based here in Hawthorne, California. And you'll also hear
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check, TGIS.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear, TGIS comm check complete, stand by with comm checks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1. Comm check.
SpaceX Jason, loud and clear.
Copy, loud and clear. Glad to have you guys on board. Stand by for comm check on Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD, Dragon to ground, comm check.
MD Dragon, loud and clear.
MD, loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD.
Dragon, launch director on countdown 1, comm check.
Good afternoon, Mike. Loud and clear.
I have you the same, and good afternoon. Stand by for my comm check on Dragon to ground. Dragon, SpaceX on Dragon to ground, comm check.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
I have you the same. Back to core.
And Dragon, SpaceX, this concludes our launch configuration comm checks. Report when ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
Dragon will put that in work.
All right, so all those communications checks were done successfully, and you could even see, and it's so cool when we get these views right inside the cabin.
SpaceX Dragon in 2.2, we are ready for seat rotation.
Copy. We will report when initiating.
But you could see Doug Hurley using his right hand. He has the talk button built into the seat itself. So just, again, showing you all of the different systems, how the suit is integrated into the seat, and it's all just one big circle for this whole spacecraft. So really cool to see those comm checks live. And we just heard the seat rotation's about to begin. So Jessica, thank you so much. Cool facts about Dragon for everyone to listen in on, and we can see the seats start to rotate now. Pretty soon Bob and Doug will be in their launch configuration, and they'll be ready to go. We can see the seats slowly start to rotate. Again, they're in this down position just to make it easier to climb in and out of Dragon. They'll rotate to this launch position to put their backs a little bit more parallel to the ground. It makes taking the G-force a little bit easier for the crew on the way uphill, but most importantly, positions those touchscreens directly in front of them, which is just their gateway into Dragon.
Dragon, SpaceX, seats are in the launch position.
We copy.
All right, and confirmation the seats are in the launch position. Let's go down now to Gary in Mission Control Houston, where I know the entire JSC team is standing by and ready to see Dragon take flight today. Over to you, Gary.
Thanks to Hero. We are at T-minus 2 hours, 26 minutes, 47 seconds and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 from the Kennedy Space Center here in Florida, carrying NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken. You see them right now aboard SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft. It's been a very exciting day so far. The crew has been up since about 8 o'clock this morning as they prepare to head to the International Space Station as part of this Demo-2 mission for NASA.
And as we speak, the astronauts, as you saw, are inside Dragon and have completed their comm checks, so now they can communicate with the teams here on the ground. And their seats have rotated upright to their reclined launch positions, allowing them to see and access the display panel. And now they are about to initiate their own suit leak checks to make sure that their seat is in proper working condition before liftoff.
And in just a little bit, at about T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes, it could happen a little bit sooner though, we're running a little bit ahead of schedule, we will see the closeout team begin to close the side hatch in preparation for flight. And that's going to be one of the key visual milestones on the timeline to liftoff. Now, we want to take you to a couple of special guests we have joining us. They are with Daryl Nail at the OSB-2 viewing location, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine, and Also, Kennedy Space Center Director Bob Cabana is there with Daryl and Mr. Bridenstine and Mr. Cabana for joining us. You can see some clouds starting to gather over Launch Complex 39A. We're keeping a close eye on weather. Again, 50% chance of launching today. We just got to see what the weather's going to do. A little bit ago, we heard the crew complete their comm checks live on the air. We saw their seats rotate. That helps get them into a little bit more comfortable position for the G-forces during launch, and more importantly, it helps them be in a better position to interact with the screens in front of them. They completed their suit leak checks. We saw during the interview just a few minutes ago the hatch begin to close, and so inside the white room there, the pad closeout team is in there still doing some work. That hatch closes, you know, it's not as simple as just closing a car door. There's a process to seal it and check it and make sure that everything is sealed properly, right, Lauren?
Yeah, that's correct. If they haven't already started, one thing that will be coming up next is the leak check. What they'll do is they'll attach a piece of ground support equipment. They don't have it in their hands right now, so it looks like it hasn't started yet. Ah, there it is. You can see it there. The closeout member number 5, it's already attached to the side hatch mechanism, and what they'll do is they're essentially checking for the leak rate, and they'll hold pressure there for a few minutes and then track that change in pressure over time to make sure that it's within bounds, making sure that you don't have any issues with those O-rings there that are holding that pressure. And so once they complete that leak check, they will then do what is the called the installation of, or the final installation of, the SPEP, or side pressure equalization plug. That's basically a plug that once the capsule splashes down, what you'll do is actually remove that, and what it does is equalizes pressure across the hatch. So once that thing is plugged in, you know that everything is super tight and that you shouldn't have any leaks on orbit.
One of the other things that I think is pretty cool about Dragon, you can kind of see them on the edges there are some of the windows. And I know that Dragon started out as cargo. It was Cargo Dragon. You have your cargo version, and before you moved on to the Crew Dragon version, but you even had windows on the cargo version. Can you explain kind of why that was?
Yeah, the very first Cargo Dragon that we ever launched had a window over the hatch, over the side hatch, and the reason we did that is we've always envisioned Dragon to ultimately be a crewed vehicle. So even in the beginning, for the very first vehicle we ever made, which didn't even really carry much cargo, we put that window there, and it to us symbolizes what Dragon's purpose has been all along. You know, taking those steps, starting off with the CRS program and resupplying the space station with experiments and food and crew provisions for the astronauts on board, to now putting putting NASA's astronauts in our own vehicle. It's that natural progression to what we were aiming for the whole time.
Mm-hmm. And Leland, what's your take on the touchscreen technology? We saw a little bit about that. Obviously, this is a very different kind of look than what we saw during the space shuttle.
You know, it's the future. I mean, we had our LCD displays, and we had lots of buttons to press, and valves and switches, and I think this new technology will allow us to get through procedures much more much faster, because we had paper flight data file that we're having to turn to different pages and get to things, and I think this will make it much more efficient to go through your malfunctions and your procedures with the touch screens. And I think having the gloves, being able to touch the screens and work within the gloves, everything's kind of sleek and efficient. There's not a lot of wires and things hanging off, and their knee boards, you can see their knee boards on their left knees, and so that's for some extra little notes and things.
The hatch is closed now.
There's some commentary.
We are ready for the post-ingress briefing when you are ready to copy.
And we just heard confirmation on the loops that the hatch is closed, so that is a little bit ahead of schedule.
We are motivated to go today.
We're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, on the weather, we still have some rain showers moving through the area, but we do have a reasonable opportunity today, so we are proceeding into the count. We are going to take a look at both pad and ascent track weather at T-minus 1 hour and 30 minutes, and the next decision point will be prior to prop load.
Okay, we copy.
And on the vehicle health front, both F9 and Dragon health remains nominal with no items of note.
So we just heard the weather is still iffy.
Good news. Thank you.
The weather is still iffy.
This concludes the post-ingress brief. Report when ready for comm checks with Falcon 9 operators.
We are ready for the F9 operators.
Copy. Expect that shortly.
So when we hear that chatter pick back up, we're going to quiet right down so that you can listen into that along with us. But we just heard them discussing the weather briefly, still keeping an eye on that, but the next decision point is going to be before prop load. So we're going to press forward for now and then reevaluate before they start fueling the rocket. But in the meantime, it sounds like Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon are healthy, so the vehicle's in good shape, right? It sounds like kind of a little bit of a repeat from Wednesday that we're just keeping an eye on the weather at this point.
You can see on their left legs, well, in that previous image.
Dragon SpaceX comm checks with F9. You can expect it in about 1 to 2 minutes.
Dragon's ready.
All right, on their left legs there, they have these satchels that are strapped to their legs. Inside are some crew provisions, including these tablets that you see that they have displayed there.
You say, Lauren, those are tablets versus just kneeboards that you can write on?
Or the tablets are inside.
Oh, they're inside,
yes.
Okay, okay. And so when would they pull those tablets out to use them?
During the mission,
Okay.
while on orbit.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's coming, if the background noise is coming through over the air, but we hear the rain really picking up outside the studio here. So I'm kind of wondering if Bob and Doug are hearing the sounds of the rain clouds opening up over the pad. It looks like it's still kind of patchy out there. But again, we were following some thunderstorms that look like they may be making their way over here. It kind of looks like it's raining from that view. It's a little bit hard to tell through the haze.
All right, launch is now just over 2 hours away. Tahira, you are there with the social teams. Now that the hatch is closed and the rain's picking up and all kinds of exciting things are going on right now as we count down and get into the last 2 hours of the count, I bet things are getting pretty interesting on social media.
The angular NASA logo and put in the worm inside of the meatball. Can you
need an ignition source to complete that fire triangle, as we call it. For this, Falcon 9 uses a fluid called T-Tub. It ignites in the presence of oxygen and gives off a green-colored flame. Now, it's hard to see on the first stage ignition due to the water that will be spraying on the pad, but you might just see the green flare as the second stage engine ignites following stage separation over 2.5 minutes into flight. Now, currently, first stage fuel tank is about 10% full. The first stage, as a reminder, as you look on the left side of your screens, the first stage is the long white cylinder at the bottom, topped off by the black cylinder. So over 2/3 of the rocket is that first stage. So the fuel tank is getting loaded. We're also loading the liquid oxygen into the first stage also. The second stage, which is the top 1/3 between the Dragon and the black cylinder, that's the white second stage. That is being loaded with fuel right now. That's about 8% loaded at this moment. Liquid oxygen loading is going to begin on second stage at T-minus 16 minutes 30 seconds. Liquid oxygen loading will continue on both stages all the way down to the last few minutes of the count. We're also loading helium into pressure vessels on the stages. That's used to pressurize tanks in flight as the propellant is pulled out by the strong Merlin turbopumps. On board the Dragon spacecraft, astronauts are monitoring systems while the propellant is loaded into Falcon 9. While we mentioned we had trained them with sounds that we had recorded on board. They've been through most of the propellant load, and they are now experiencing those sounds and vibrations.
Stage 1,
the
helium load
continues
started.
to report no problems. They are go to support launch. Weather, the last of the red conditions cleared up about 15 minutes ago. Everything is marginal but acceptable on the weather. We'll continue to watch all the way through the countdown. Now, as a reminder, today we are now into an instantaneous launch window now that we've begun propellant loading. So at this point, if we hear a hold for any reason, we'll have to stand down and target our backup launch opportunity tomorrow, May 31st.
Thanks, John. For Demo-2, Bob and Doug's flight to station will take about 19 hours, and their journey is fairly similar to the trip our cargo Dragon makes back and forth to the International Space Station, but with two noticeable differences, and that's docking and splashdown.
And as we await T-0 in just under 29 minutes from now, the ground operations teams are doing a series of system checks to make sure Dragon and Falcon 9 are both ready for liftoff. And we're continuing to get live views inside the capsule with Bob and Doug, and you're now also looking in firing room 4 down there at the Cape.
Once we hit T0 and a successful launch occurs, we will watch Falcon 9 and Dragon make their ascent until the Falcon 9 first and second stage separates and sends Dragon on its way to the space station.
And at this point, mission operators will prepare Dragon for on-orbit operations, where the vehicle will execute a series of burns that gradually raise its orbit to align more closely with the space station, as you can see in this animation. And just after putting Dragon into the same orbital plane as the station, the teams will get ready for Dragon's approach and docking maneuvers.
The next Dragon will make its approach and actually dock with the space station. And this is a very different process from what we've seen with Dragon cargo.
When you see people on that very personal level, it starts to mean so much. They are a part of our team. You know, they're not a customer. They're our team. They're not a payload. They're our team. They're a family. And so we're just so excited to see the dads up there today.
Yeah. Go dads!
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go send it over to Gary for an update from Houston. Gary?
See a large white cloud coming off of the strongback. That is normal. As we get ready to load the second stage with liquid oxygen, we have to chill in the plumbing lines going up that strongback. And so as we relieve pressure, the moist, humid Florida air condenses around it, and that gives you the cloud. So that tells us that things are actually on schedule. We did begin propellant load at T-minus 35 minutes. Fuel loading on the second stage, I believe we just heard the call out that it is complete. First stage fuel load is continuing, and right now that's a little more than, that's about 60% of the way full. So things are looking good. Second stage is getting ready to begin the liquid oxygen loading. After they finish chilling in the lines that you see on the monitor, they'll begin the load at T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds. The range right now is go, ready to support. Weather continues to be go. As we inch our way closer, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're waiting to hear if anybody calls out an issue, but for the moment, as you can see on the screen, it looks good. Now, on the Dragon side, the Dragon mission director and the team there are reporting no issues. They've done their communications checkouts. The crew access arm, as you can see, is retracted away from the spacecraft. The crew is strapped in and they are ready to go. Now, final instructions will be going to the crew at T-minus 10 minutes. The crew displays will be configured for launch, and that setup will give astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley insight into how the launch is proceeding and provides constant updates on vehicle health. We've already heard the crew give their go, close their visors, and get ready for launch. For Dragon, it'll enter terminal count at T-minus 5 minutes. When it transitions to internal power, we'll hear continued callouts on the countdown net as we get close to zero and to liftoff. But right now, at T-minus 18 minutes, 15 seconds, everything continues to be go for an on-time launch. So Dan, Jesse, things are looking pretty good. How are they doing over at your stand?
Things are great from about 15 feet away from you, John, and honestly, things are looking pretty great down at the pad there. We're seeing a lot more blue in the sky. Green is the color we want when we're talking about weather, and that's where we're sitting right now. So we're continuing to count down. We are under 18 minutes away from liftoff. Again, it's an instantaneous liftoff it's going to be 12:22 and 45 seconds here on the West Coast, 3:22 and 45 seconds over on the East Coast there in Florida. Just a reminder, it's going to be about a 9-minute ride up to orbit for the Falcon 9 and Bob and Doug on board Dragon. It'll be a 2-stage flight So we'll see the first stage fly until we hear MECO, or main engine cutoff, about 2.5 minutes into flight. After that, the second stage will take over and continue to power them the rest of the way. Second engine cutoff comes in just under 9 minutes at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds. Following that second stage completing its job, it'll continue to coast for about 3 minutes. It'll do a slight attitude adjustment and null out any rate, so make sure it's not in any kind of a spin before they do separation. So that's when the Dragon spacecraft will physically separate from the Falcon 9 vehicle, and Bob and Doug will be flying free. It's about a 19-hour ride if we launch today on time. So that means Bob and Doug will get on orbit. They'll have a number of burns, or those firings of those Draco thrusters that they'll do over
Stage 2 LOX load started.
We hear the LOX, the liquid oxygen load, has now started on stage 2. But again, they're going to be doing a series of burns on the way uphill towards the International Space Station 5, spread out over the first 16 hours or so of their flight until they get much closer and it's time for that approach and docking. And we are expecting that with an on-time launch to happen today. That'll be coming tomorrow in the afternoon. All right, now that we're under 16 minutes away, we have a special guest joining us. I'm going to toss it over to Jesse.
Well, we are so excited. We are just a few minutes away from countdown, so we are going to turn it over to Dan and John for the final minutes in terminal count. Take it away, John.
T-minus 13 minutes, 30 seconds, continuing to count down. We're continuing to load fuel onto the first stage. That should finish up in just about 6 minutes. Fuel is completely loaded on the second stage. That's closed out. And we are continuing to load liquid oxygen on both the first and second stage. The liquid oxygen load beginning on the second stage just about 3.5 minutes ago. We are also loading cryogenic helium into the storage vessels on the first and second stage, getting in the last little bits of helium. When we keep it cryogenic, cold and liquefied, that gets us, just like we do with liquid oxygen, the maximum amount into the storage volume so that we can get the most performance out of the vehicle. Right now we are in a fairly quiet state on the vehicle. Ground pumps continuing to put the propellant in to first and second stages. Next significant issue callouts that we're going to hear will probably be inside the T-minus 10 minutes when they talk to the crew. We'll listen for that. But at the moment, everything continuing to look good at T-minus 12 minutes and 20 seconds.
We're getting real close now, John. It's only a little over 12 minutes away. Just a reminder for everybody, it's about a 9-minute ride uphill. We'll have some dueling boxes going on as that first stage is going to be coming home while the second stage is carrying Bob and Doug into orbit. But obviously, we'll be keeping an eye on our astronauts the whole way uphill. Some of the calls that you'll be hearing, as there will be what we call performance calls over the Dragon to ground the entire way uphill. And you'll just hear some of the SpaceX engineers calling out trajectories and booster performance. So we're always looking for that word nominal. I know that's one of John's favorite words. That's one of mine too. We want to hear nominal as much as possible up on the way uphill. You might also hear some number and letter combinations, and those correspond to the different abort zones that Bob and Doug are in during their flight uphill. There's 1A and 1B, which signify that they're on the first stage. Those carry them from there in the Cape all the way up to about the very top of North Carolina. And then we'll have 2A through 2E or 2 Echo, and that will be on the second stage, and that goes from North Carolina all the way up to about the tip of Newfoundland, so in the northern Atlantic. And then there is a zone of the northern Atlantic that we're going to avoid, and so you should hear the call out be something similar to forward to Shannon, and that just refers to Shannon, Ireland, which they'll be going off the coast of Ireland at the later stages of the second stage if they have to abort. So just prepping you now for some of those calls. You're hopefully going to hear that word nominal a whole lot on the way uphill. 10.5 minutes. Things are pretty quiet. As John I said, it'll pick up right at about 10 minutes. We'll wait for the crew just to confirm that they're displays are in order. The crew is already strapped in and reported that they are go for launch, and we'll continue to watch the fuel gauges tick up on the Falcon 9 vehicle until fueling cuts off at just about 2 minutes prior to launch.
Dragon and SpaceX confirmed displays are configured for launch.
SpaceX Dragon displays are configured for launch.
Copy. Bob, Doug, on behalf of the entire SpaceX team, it's been a huge honor to help you get ready for today's historic mission. Know that we're with you, have an amazing flight, and enjoy those views of our beautiful planet.
Thanks, Jay. It is absolutely our honor to be part of this huge effort to get the United States back in the launch business. We'll talk to you from orbit. Thank you.
Copy all. Thanks for those words.
SpaceX core, so again, that voice that's going to be talking to Bob and Doug throughout their mission from right here in Hawthorne, just offering a few quick words. The crew did confirm their crew displays are configured for launch. We are coming up on 9 minutes and counting.
We've gotten through T-minus 10 minute with the crew discussions. Activity is now going to switch over to Falcon 9. Our next major event comes at T-minus 7 minutes. We begin what we call engine chill. Pre-valves will open. Those currently separate propellants on the first stage from getting down to the Merlin engines. We'll open the pre-valves. That'll allow fuel liquid oxygen to flow to the top of the pumps. And more importantly, when we open the valves, that'll allow us to begin chilling the 9 Merlin 1D turbo pumps on the first stage engine. It'll take a few minutes to get them cold enough to where they would then be ready to pass the large amounts of liquid oxygen through the pumps and into the main thrust chambers when we get to engine ignition at T-minus 2 seconds. We don't want to try to run highly chilled liquid oxygen through a warm pump. You would flash that into gas, and running gas through a high-speed pump is not a good thing. So right now, we are waiting for T-minus 7 minutes. That'll start the engine chill. Shortly after that, we will also get the fuel shutdown. Listening to the SpaceX launch director in the background there. As I mentioned, at T-minus 7 minutes as we start the chill, we will also get into the final topping off of stage 1 fuel, and then the fuel load will complete.
Stage 1 and Stage 2 engine chill has started.
We've heard the call out. Stage 1 engine chill has started. That's gone up to the crew so that they've got situational awareness. As I mentioned, the pre-valves are open, and now we are topping off first stage fuel, getting ready to finish the fuel load. Liquid oxygen load on first and second stage will continue until the last 3 to 2 minutes of the countdown.
We should hear that call out RP1 load complete coming up in about 6 minutes. Again, RP1 is just that densified kerosene or that rocket fuel that Falcon 9 is going to be used to power Bob and Doug to orbit today.
Right on time. That call out indicates that the fuel loading on the first stage is complete. Draining back the lines now, so first stage and second stage fuel are complete. Liquid oxygen loading is continuing on both stages. You can see on the view on the left side of the monitor the condensation, the cold gas wrapped around the stages as the tank skins are chilled by the densified liquid oxygen picking up the humidity from the Florida air.
It looks like at this moment we're a little more than 90% full on the oxidizer on the first stage, ticking up towards that 80% mark on the second stage. We'll be counting down all the way till about 2 or 3 minutes, as John and I just said, until everything is loaded in Falcon 9.
Heaters closing out.
And then we will be go for launch.
Dragon has transitioned to configure for terminal count. Vehicle tanks pressing for strongback retract.
We're pressurizing the Falcon 9 tanks. We're going to open the clamp arm around the second stage and begin to retract the strongback. We'll move back about 2 degrees. That'll get us to the liftoff position. At liftoff, the strongback will then recline about 45 degrees away.
Started. Stage 2, RP1 bleed.
Launch director called out the strongback retract has started. On the left, you'll see it go back just a couple of degrees.
Stage 1, RP1 bleed.
We are just 4 minutes away from liftoff. Again, at this moment, Bob and Doug are really just laser focused on those displays. They have insight directly into Dragon and the Falcon 9. They're able to see where their fuel loading is at, how everything's progressing down with the count.
AFTS final setup started.
3.5 minutes from launch.
And the strongback is now reclining away from the Falcon 9.
Dragon has transitioned to terminal count and is on internal power. Stage 1, LOX load closed out.
Okay, we're T-minus 2 minutes, 42 seconds. Stage 1 LOX load is closed out. Stage 2 will continue to load for about another half a minute or so. Once we get the completion of Stage 2 LOX loading, we have to vent down the line, so you'll see another large white cloud coming off of the strongback. That'll be normal. That'll happen
Vehicle
around
is transitioning to
T-minus
internal power.
1 minute and 40 seconds. We're going on internal power now.
Just a few seconds away from the Stage 2 LOX load being complete. It's been almost 9 years since we've been in this position. A lot of work done by thousands of people to get to this point. All our eyes focused on 2 now.
Stage 2 LOX load is closed out. Propellant fills are complete.
Stage 2 LOX load complete. All fuel, all oxidizer on Falcon 9. 1 minute 34 seconds to go till launch.
Ground gas closeouts is starting.
Falcon 9 is in startup. Dragon is in countdown. FTS is armed for launch.
Under a minute now, the FTS, the flight termination system, has been armed.
Dragon, SpaceX, go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, we're go for launch. Let's light this candle.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
T-minus 15 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon. Go NASA, go SpaceX, Godspeed, Bob and Doug.
America has launched. And so rises a new era of American spaceflight, and with it the ambitions of a new generation continuing the dream. 20 seconds into flight, Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
T plus 30 seconds into this historic mission. Flying crew on board Dragon and Falcon 9, and look at them go.
Falcon power telemetry nominal.
M1D throttle down.
We're throttling down to get ready for the period of maximum dynamic pressure. We're in the throttle bucket. Reports say all systems are go.
Vehicle is supersonic.
We've exceeded Mach 1 on the Falcon 9.
M1D throttle up.
We're throttling back up to full power as we're through max Q.
Copy, 1 Bravo.
And we heard that 1 Bravo call out. That's just the second abort zone that they're in. They'll continue to be on this until the first stage has done its job and they switch over to the second. At this point, Bob and Doug pulling about 2.3 Gs, 2.3 times the Earth's gravity, already moving at over 1,500 miles per hour.
We've heard the call out for MVAC engine chill. That's getting the MVAC engine ready to light. That'll come at about 2:44 into flight. Right now, everything continuing to look good. Next major event coming up is going to be the triple. We'll have main engine cutoff of the 9 first stage engines, stage separation, and then ignition of the second stage engine to continue to carry astronauts into orbit. Coming up in about 20 seconds.
M1D throttle down.
We heard we're throttling down the Merlin engines on the first stage. And we have MECO.
MECO.
2 Alpha.
Falcon stage separation confirmed.
Copy, 2 Alpha.
MVAC ignition.
All right, we have stage separation confirmed. The first stage beginning its flight back. The second stage being powered by that single Merlin 1D vacuum engine has ignited and is now carrying Bob and dug into orbit. So they're going to continue under the power of this second
Stage 2 propulsion is nominal.
which will cut off at SECO, or second engine cut off at about 8 minutes and 44 seconds into today's flight. So a little over 5 minutes to go still on this second stage. You heard the call out to Alpha, so they're now in the longest abort zone that carries them all the way from about North Carolina up the eastern seaboard almost to Canada. Things looking good though, getting good call outs, nominal propulsion on that second stage. Bob and Doug continuing to make their way into orbit.
Dragon SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Acquisition of signal in Bermuda.
SpaceX Dragon, nominal trajectory.
All right, here in nominal trajectories, the Dragon pointed in the right direction, continuing to make their flight uphill. Heard acquisition of signal Bermuda. That's one of the other ground stations that they're using to get telemetry and data back from this spacecraft.
Stage 2 propulsion is still nominal.
A little over 4 minutes, 40 seconds into the flight. Bob and Doug flying at more than 5,600 miles
Dragon
per hour.
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
Already almost 200 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center. Nominal trajectory continuing. And while they continue uphill, looks like we are getting a view of the first stage as well.
Yep, on your right screen, you can see that first stage with the grid fins deployed. It's making its way back to attempt to land on our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You today. And we're just about a couple minutes away from the entry burn, and that's where 3 of the 9 Merlin engines do ignite to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters back into the Earth's atmosphere. And then after the entry burn will be the landing burn, which is just a single engine
Dragon
burn.
SpaceX, nominal trajectory.
And you heard
Nominal
starting
trajectory.
chill for entry burn. There's that call out. They are still on a nominal trajectory on Dragon, still on second stage, and that's that MVAC engine on second stage on your left screen. Again, on your right screen is that first stage booster coming back towards our drone ship, Of Course, I Still Love You. We're about a minute away from entry burn.
Meanwhile, that second stage continuing to power Dragon into orbit. Again, if you're keeping an eye on that timer, that's going to continue to burn until 8 minutes and 44 seconds into flight. So a little over 2 minutes from now, we'll hear the call out SECO. It'll then be a little
Stage 2 propulsion is still good.
A little over 3 minutes until Dragon physically separates from the second stage of the Falcon 9 after the upper
Dragon
stage gets a
SpaceX,
chance.
nominal trajectory.
Dragon copies, nominal trajectory.
Continuing to check in with Bob and Doug as they are on a nominal trajectory. Just about 10 seconds away from that first stage, starting that entry burn on your right screen. We should be able to see that view live.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there is that entry burn
Acquisition
beginning.
signal, yeah.
This burn lasts about 36 seconds long.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
While that entry burn continues, we're just about a minute away from SECO. We'll have a number of events all happen in rapid succession. That'll be the second engine cutoff.
Stage 1
We'll be
entry burn
looking for that stage 1 landing burn shortly after.
Yeah, actually just within a few seconds of each other. Such a cool view on your left screen, seeing Bob and Doug on Dragon. Right now you can see the displays that they are seeing right now themselves.
Terminal guidance.
And vector all step.
We are coming up 25 seconds or so away from SECO, or second engine cutoff.
This is also the point where Bob and Doug are experiencing their highest G-force. We're seeing the counter tick up to right about 1.8.
Copy, Shannon.
You heard Shannon, so that just means they're in their final abort zones. If they were to abort at this point, it would either be an abort to orbit or to land off the coast of Ireland. Standing by for second
Stage 1
engine
landing
cutoff
startup.
confirmation.
And vector all step.
Confirmation of SECO's second engine cutoff.
Now we are waiting for our first stage to make its way to our drone ship. Of course, I still love you.
Dragon SpaceX nominal orbital insertion.
Launch escape confirmation of nominal
Dragon
orbital
copy.
insertion.
Nominal orbital insertion.
And what you're seeing on your screen is a live view of our drone ship, where our first stage will be coming down. Looks like we lost that live view, but we'll wait for confirmation of that landing shortly here.
Falcon 9 first stage is successfully landed.
And there you can see on your screen, Falcon 9 has landed. This is the first Falcon 9 to carry humans to orbit, so very exciting for us. And as you can see on your right screen, Bob and Doug are still making their way to their targeted orbit.
M1D to recovery 1.
So exciting today.
M1D.
It doesn't stop.
It does not stop.
All right, we did hear again that call out, good orbital insertion, so that means Falcon 9 and Dragon right now exactly where they're supposed to be.
M1D to FRC on recovery 1.
And it's right at about 12 minutes when Dragon will separate. Looks like we saw a 0G indicator floating around there. I know Bob and Doug owe us a little bit about what exactly that is that they brought up with them.
And before separation, before Dragon initiates separation from the second stage, they do make sure to they do ensure that the vehicle is not spinning and it is in good condition before we separate.
That's right, the upper stage does small attitude maneuver using some cold gas thrusters built into the rocket body itself.
Exactly, so we do expect that separation to occur in about a minute from now, but they do wait until they have full confirmation that it is ready to separate. Such cool views. I cannot get over this view that we are seeing right now. Bob and Doug on the right screen inside of Crew Dragon out in space.
Yeah, already 200 kilometers over planet Earth, or a little over 124 miles, traveling in excess of 2,700 meters, 27,000 meters per second, or about 16,000 miles per hour. So again, we're just standing by. That separation event should be coming up shortly. Then they'll begin a series of checks on the Draco thrusters that are going to be used to maneuver and then power Dragon on its flight to the International Space Station. Standing by for separation.
Expected loss of signal, wallows.
It sounds like we had an expected LOS loss of signal with one of the ground stations. Waiting for confirmation now of that setup.
Dragon separation confirmed.
Dragon separation confirmed.
There is a great view right in front of you of Dragon separating.
Separation confirmed.
And there's that call out. Dragon is now officially making its way to the International Space Station today.
Dragon SpaceX, with that separation call, we have a few words for you from our Falcon 9 team.
Standing by.
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Dragon to Ground. Bob Doug, on behalf of the entire launch team, thanks for flying with Falcon 9 today. We hope you enjoyed the ride and wish you a great mission.
Thanks, Bala. Congratulations to you and the F9 team for the first human ride for Falcon 9, and it was incredible. Appreciate all the hard work, and thanks for the great ride to space.
Copy all.
Oh, and like, proud of you guys and the rest of the team. Thank you so much for what you've done for us today, putting America back into low Earth orbit from the Florida coast.
Copy all. Good luck. Godspeed.
All right, so Bob and Doug are in
And Dragon
space.
SpaceX, we confirm nominal ECLS activation and service section Draco checkouts. Nose cone deploys in progress.
Copy all. We're monitoring.
The Corps here in Hawthorne giving the crew a heads up that we have confirmation the nose cone is deploying. So again, that nose cone is going to open up a little bit more than 90 degrees, goes up to about, I think, 105 degrees, and that's going to expose the actual docking ring and the hatch that they're going to be going through once they attach to the International Space Station. And also 4 of those Draco thrusters, we call them the forward bulkhead thrusters, they're going to be used for these major phase burns or firings of those thrusters to actually raise their orbit gradually over the coming hours. Also heard good activation of the ECLS, that's the Environmental Control and Life Support System. That's everything controlling their atmosphere, just keeping Dragon a nice, safe, habitable environment where they're going to be living for the next 19 hours until they arrive at the space station.
Right, exactly. And Falcon 9's job may be done for today, but the mission is not over. Crew Dragon's job is not done. As you can see, Bob and Doug are still inside Crew Dragon, making their way. It will be a 19-hour trip to the International Space Station before they dock tomorrow morning. And such cool views. I love that we can get these live views here and see and watch what they're doing now that they are in orbit.
Yeah, it's incredible to just be looking over their shoulder, to be along for the ride. And we're going to be with them, and we're going to be with all of you the entire way for their journey to the space station. We're going to be covering live throughout. Bob and Doug will obviously have a sleep period where they'll get about 8 hours of sleep a little bit later today before they wake up for all of their final approach. One of the major things we are looking forward to in the next couple of hours is going to be their first turn at the controls. So they're actually going to be using those touchscreen displays to take control and manually pilot Dragon. We'll walk you through what that's going to look like, and assuming we have some good ground station coverage, we'll be able to get views from right inside Dragon, looking over their shoulder as they manipulate the controls at the display. But I mean, we had a smooth ride uphill, both stages of the Falcon 9 doing their job, placing Bob and Doug in orbit. I mean, this is a day, this is a historical day. This is us kicking off that new era of space flight that we've all been talking about and longing for since the Space Shuttle program came to an end in 2011.
Yes.
And the weather cooperated.
Yes, second time's a charm.
Right.
All right, so day for the history books. As you can see, we have lost some live signal there, but the mission still continues, and we're going to send it over to KSC to continue broadcasting live with you.
Loss of signal, Newfoundland.